Hey guys, it's Logan again. Welcome back to another YouTube tutorial video on creating games in GameMaker Studio 2. In this video, we're going to be going over how to create an inventory system for an RPG type game. This inventory system will have the functionality to, for example, use active items and display active items at the top of the screen, as well as hold additional items. So let me go ahead and show you what we're going to make. I'm going to go ahead and start the project. I'm about to also demonstrate why separating your functions out into different objects is important. Okay, so you'll see this is the project that you're gonna create. I'm gonna give you the example project, which is down below, or the basically the startup file that'll have all the graphics and all this extra stuff implemented. Okay, and you can see my items increasing the amount I have as I pick them up, and I have them up here. Now I can hit 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 to use these items. I can hit 3 and it's going to show a blue flash. That's me using the blue potion. I can use 1 and it's going to show the red flash of me using the red potion. And if I use it again, you'll see the slot goes away. It's empty. I can now hit 2 and use the yellow potion. I could hit 3 and use the blue potion once more. And yeah, so there we go. I'm out of potions now. Awesome. So this is kind of a basic setup that will help you build onto it. It's going to be a awesome system that you can probably easily build onto and add new items. Let's go ahead and get started. So like I said, this is the project that you're going to have, but it's not going to have any of this inventory functionality, and I'm actually going to demonstrate how easy it is for me to now rip out my inventory system with the way we're going to build it. So if you ever want to rewrite inventory or just delete your inventory system out, it's not ingrained in your core game. So for example, all I have to do is go to my inventory. I'm just going to delete the inventory folder. I'm going to delete the inventory folder in our scripts, and I do not have to do anything else. If I start the game, we're not going to get any errors, and this is where you're going to start from in your project. So I'm actually about to save this, and so you guys can start with this, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and actually save this as a separate project. Awesome, so there we go. This is where we're going to start from. All right, so we have an RPG inventory system. An inventory system should be these things. First of all, it should be a system, so it's mostly separate from the rest of the game, right? And I just demonstrated that. We're gonna separate this out so you can easily add or subtract from it. And as I just said, it easily added to. So you should be able to, with an inventory system, easily add new items, remove old items, refactor your system. It should be a system, so it should be easy to use like a system. And once again, easy to be removed from. So I already said that. Easily remove items from it. And it should be easy to use. So basically, it should just be flexible and very easy to use, add, subtract, and manage. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the structure that we're going to use. Well, let's talk about an item first, okay? An inventory consists of an item. Actually, it consists of a group of items, many different items, and all of these items have properties. Okay, so for instance, the yellow potion might have a property that it's yellow, or it does a specific type of healing, while the blue potion regenerates mana. I don't know. They have properties. So some properties that we're gonna demonstrate are just gonna be name. And by the way, the properties, you're gonna be able to easily add new properties to this system and take away properties you don't need. So you might have a name for each item. You also might have the total. We're actually going to use this, so you could stack items as you saw. So each item is going to have a property that says total amount. So you have an item type, and then within it has a property that says how many of those item types are you carrying, and maybe what it does. So the action it takes when you use it. We're going to actually implement this using script execute. And maybe a type itself. So each of these might be under the type of potion, and you might have items that are a type of weapon. So you have like subtypes basically. So you have a weapon, or you have weapons, you have potions, you have, I don't know, armor, different things like that. So that could be a property of every specific item. So how do we represent this in the computer? We're going to use a two-dimensional array. This is pretty common for this type of thing. We'll have a two-dimensional array that we're going to call item definitions. You could rename this if you really wanted. Basically, this is going to house the properties for each item type, and it's going to be structured like this. We're going to have an item type for the first index. So this is where we specify what type of item it is, and then its specific properties. And the properties will have different indexes for the second dimension in the matrix. In the matrix. It is a matrix. Oh, I don't know why that sounded weird. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so visually, this is what it looks like. So we have this yellow potion. Ignore this top row as far as indexes go in the array. This is just for visualization. So the yellow potion would have all of these properties, and the blue potion would have the same properties. The red potion would have the same properties, but they have individual properties. You see they have individual cells here. So you could see that these are indexed by numbers in our array. For example, if we have item type 0, it's going to be pointing to our yellow, and then it has sub-properties, second dimension here, this property. And 0 is going to be its name, 1 is going to be the amount, 2 is going to be the action. And we aren't actually going to hard code these, so it's going to be really easy to add more properties on to your items, or take away, or move, or whatever. Okay? And yep, this just shows what I just demonstrated. Item type is going to be up here, so 0 is a yellow potion, 1's a blue potion, 2's a red potion. Now, how can we easily represent these numbers without using 0, 1, 2? Like, we're not going to remember that 0 means, hey, it's a yellow potion, okay? So what we're going to actually use is enums, okay? And if you don't know what an enum is, basically it is a static data type. And by static, whenever I say static, I mean that it can't change, okay? And it's put in memory at compile time, okay? And what that means is after the game's compiled, it's in memory, you can't change the value of it. And as well, as far as GameMaker goes, you don't actually have to include enums in a script that is attached to an object. You could just have it somewhere in your code. It doesn't even have to be instantiated, basically, okay? Because when the code compiles, enums are stored in memory, so they happen before any objects or your game even start, or technically it's before your game starts actually. So here's how we declare enums, and this is one we're going to use. We're going to use an enum called item type, and for each item you have, you'll just do this. You'll give it an item type. And what do these mean? As far as enums go, in GameMaker, the first one up here, yellow potion, would be 0. That's set to 0. You can actually specify these numbers yourself if you really wanted. You could say equals 0, just like a variable. But by default, this one will be 0, this one will be 1, this one will be 2. Okay? And they just keep going down like that. So you don't ever have to worry about these actual numbers. We're just going to use this and let GameMaker take care of the numbers for us. So each item that you want to add to your game, you just add an item type name here in the enum. And it would have to be obviously unique. 2 items couldn't share the same type right here. And the second thing we're going to use is item property. So anytime you want to add a new type of property for your items in your inventory, you would add it here on top of this. And I'm going to show you a little trick with getting how many items are in this later, and that's kind of a trick unique to enums. So let's go over an example of how we're going to use this code. So let's assign a name to the yellow. So the yellow potion, let's give it a name. How do we do it? Well, the first way, which by the way, you could put these references to these enums inside your array itself without storing them in a variable first. I did this because I couldn't fit it all in here without making the text too small. So item type yellow potion, given this enum up here, this is how you access the enums. You get item type dot yellow potion, just like it was an object almost. And that's actually going to be equal to 0, so yellow item's getting set to 0. And name prop, so this is going to be the property that we're wanting to set for that item. And obviously I'm getting item property.name. So, and that's also equal to 0 because it's the first one here. And now when we use them to access our definitions array, you could see that we're accessing 0, 0. So given this, 0, 0 will be name over here. But we didn't actually have to type 0, 0 in because we're using these actual enums, which makes it much easier to know what we're referencing. And then we're setting the name there. So we could do this for all different type of objects. And we're going to write a script to make this easier. Awesome. So let's assign an action to blue. And what an action is this is actually going to be a script that we're going to assign per item that will be executed when that item is used. If it's up in your menu and you press 1, that's what actually made the screen flash, was the script. So we have blue item, and we do the same thing. We get our blue potion and our use script. We're just getting our indexes from the enums, and then we are referencing that position in the array using those values, and then we're assigning a script reference. I'm going to show you how to do this. It's pretty cool. You can just give it the name of a script, and then you can use script execute on this array here, and it will actually execute that script. So it's going to make it really easy for us. Okay, awesome. So let's get to programming. The first thing that we're going to do today in this first part is just do the scripts, okay? So we aren't going to do any of the graphics or any of that. We're going to write our individual scripts that we're going to be using, okay? And it's going to be pretty cool. Okay, so the first thing that I like to do is create a new group, and I'm going to call it inventory. And these are where all our inventory related scripts are going to go, okay? And then I'm going to create another group and call it setup. So this is like our initialization. It's actually going to be through a couple different scripts here. And let's go ahead and make our enums. Let's go over how to do that. So I created two groups, and I'm going to create a script now. And I'm going to call this, I'm going to prefix it with inv because this is how I do scripts. I just prefix them with what they are. I don't use scr anymore, but yeah, feel free to do it however you want. So I'm going to use inv, and then I'm going to say enums, okay? Remember I said enums don't have to be attached to an object in GameMaker? Well, they don't. So we can just leave them here in the script, and whatever we initialize here will be set, okay? This is going to be all the enums related to our inventory. Okay, so how do we initialize them? We start with enum, and we're going to say item type, okay? You could say inventory item type, however you want to specify this, but I'm just going to use item type. And you'll see that if we check our sprites, our sprites up here, if we check the sprites, you can see we have pickups. We have pickup vial, blue, yellow, green, red. We're going to go ahead and type out yellow potion. We're going to type out blue potion. We're going to type out red potion, okay? This is all we're going to use for now, okay? You don't want to comma after the last one. I think it'll throw an error, maybe not. Okay, it actually won't, but you don't need it. Awesome. So let me go ahead and bring that back. The next thing we want to do is add some properties. So let's do that. Let's do enum. Let's do, what do we want to name it? Let's do item property. Let's do properties, maybe. You could do props, but it kind of, if someone else were reading that, they might not understand what it means. So I'm going to use properties, really long descriptive names. It's not the cleanest way necessarily, but it is clear what it's doing at least. Okay, and we're actually going to go set a couple different types of properties that we didn't even go over in the presentation. The first one we're going to use is sprites, okay? And this is going to be the sprite that's actually displayed on our HUD if we own that item, okay? So if you check the sprites, you can see I actually have a GUI folder with different, they're kind of actually the same as the pickups, but they're larger, okay? And for the GUI, I'm actually using 44 by 44, no specific reason, that's just kind of what it landed on when I resized them. That's what I'm using for the GUI, and I built the item holder around that, okay? And these are much smaller because they're gonna be in-game as pickups, okay? So the GUI items need to be a bit bigger, the graphics. So that's gonna be our sprite, so each item's gonna get a sprite to display if we own it. And then we're also going to give it, we can give it a name. This could be a description. We aren't actually going to use this visually for anything, but if you wanted to show a name of the item, you'd be able to from this. We're going to say an amount, which is going to be how many of this specific item we own. So how many blue potions do we own? How many yellow potions do we own? And then we're going to give it a use script. And this is going to be a script for each item's use. Whatever you want it to do when it's used, you will write a script for it, and then it'll just execute that script automatically. And the last thing we're going to do is actually get the length. So enums by default don't have a built-in way to actually get the length. How many values are in this enum? There's no way to get it. But a little trick with enums is if you put the variable length at the end, or whatever you want to name it, at the end of these, just from the way enums work, as long as this is at the end, we can reference, for example, item type.length, and it will give us the value 3, which is how many elements we have. 1, 2, 3, because it starts 0, 1, 2, 3. So when we reference this, it's actually going to give us the value 3. And if we add a new value in here, like a green potion, guess what? Length is now going to give us the value 4. And it just so happens there's 4 enums in here. Okay, so we can use length to get how many item types we have. And we're going to use this for array initialization, okay? And next thing we want to do is initialize. This is basically going to be called at the beginning of our gameplay. So we want to initialize our array, which is going to initialize our data structures and things. I'm going to go ahead and close out this enums. And let's create a new script. I'm going to call it inv initialize. this is going to initialize some things. So the first thing that we want to get is actually, which we'll come back to this later, but we're going to use macros, by the way. If you don't know what macros are, they're another static component. Basically, they're put in memory at compile time, so you also don't have to attach these to an object. And these are a good way you can use constants. There's actually a lot more you could do with it. Go read my article if you want to know more about these. Okay, so we're actually going to have a max active inventory items. Enum. This is actually going to be how many are going to be displayed at the top, first of all, and basically how many shortcut keys you can use. So we're going to set it to default 5. So by default, we can press 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to use our items at the top. And we're also going to base the drawing of our items based off of this constant, okay? And we're going to create another macro. And this is going to be for our maximum inventory items, okay? This is going to be basically the max size of our inventory. So we can only have 20 types of items. Not how many items total necessarily, but how many different types, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and use 20. No real reason. Actually, we could probably use 5 and it'd be better. But anyway, we're going to use 20 for now. And then let's create our inventory array. And what is our inventory array? Basically, our inventory array is going to point, each index is going to point to an item type, okay? And that's all we need to know is an item type at a specific slot. This, you could actually call this inventory slot. That's basically what it is. So in a slot, there's going to be one of these guys, okay? Item type, okay? And we're actually going to create, this is a one-dimensional array, and we're going to initialize it initially to our max inventory items size up here that we initialized. So this is actually going to be 20. And we're initially going to initialize all the values inside of this array to inventory, item, what'd I name it? Sorry. Item type. Okay, so it's item type dot none. Okay, we haven't created this one yet, but basically this is going to be like empty or whatever you want to call it. I'm calling it none, and we're going to add this to our item types. So I'm going to put this at the beginning, just to make none 0. That makes sense. And basically this means that there's no item in that slot. And that's it. So next we need to basically define our items. If you remember from our presentation, each item has a property, and we've put basically, actually none is a type of item if you want it to be. You could display an empty sprite for your HUD or whatever. So you could actually assign none a sprite and basically give it a script to execute that would be nothing if you wanted. It would do nothing or just say, you don't have an item here. But we're going to go ahead and create these definitions for our items. And we're going to do this in a separate script, but we're going to go ahead and call it from here so we don't have to switch back. I'm going to call it inv declare item definitions. And some reason it's showing it even though I deleted it earlier. So that's what we're going to call it, declare item definitions. Okay, let's go ahead and create that script. Create script. And it's inv declare item definitions. Awesome. So what is this actually going to do? It's going to declare our items. So if you remember, to declare items and properties, if you remember the items and properties we have, let me go ahead and make this 2 pane or 2 columns. So you could see both of these kind of at once. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted this guy. There we go. And then let's shrink this down a bit. Okay, so these are 2 different scripts. Don't get confused. Just doing it to demonstrate. Okay, so if we want to declare an item in our inventory, first we have to make an inventory definitions. If you remember from our thing here, we're going to have item definitions. So let's go ahead and create that array. So we're going to say item definitions. And it's a 2-dimensional array. What's the size of our array? Well, remember our first dimension in our array is going to be the item type. So we could say item type dot length. So we're going to specify the length of 3. Actually, it's 4 now because none is included. So it's going to basically create an array with the first dimension at size 4. And our second dimension is the properties. Okay, how many properties do we have? Well, we have dot length. Item type dot length. There we go. And now we need to set this to some kind of value. So we're just going to set it to no one, starting off the bat. So every single grid space in our array is going to be equal to no one, which means it's not defined right now. Okay, awesome. So next we need to start defining our different items. the first thing that we're going to do is say item definitions, item type dot, let's say none. Let's define our none item first. And we'll define the item type dot sprite. And you'll see we have this sEmpty sprite over there. That's what we're going to set our sprite to for this type. And then item definitions, I'm going to copy and paste. We're going to change just the name. And we're going to set the name to just an empty string. And copy and paste this. And we're going to change the amount. We're just going to say -1 because you can't have an amount of empties necessarily, right? And then maybe have a use script, which we haven't created any yet, but we will. It's going to be a use script. And you can see this is getting kind of repetitive at this point. We don't want to do this for all of our items, so let's make an easier way. Let's actually write a script that is going to do all this for us, okay? And we'll just call the script. So here's how we want to be able to use it. We want to say inventory add item def. We'll just say add item def, okay? Sounds kind of cool. We just want to pass in an item type, and we'll just say none. We want to pass in our sprite, so we'll just say sEmpty. We want to pass in our name, so we'll just pass in a string. We want to pass in an amount, an initial amount. We'll just set to -1, or 0 is fine. Let's just do 0. That's totally fine. And then a script. This will be some script reference. We'll have to create a use script. I'm going to prefix them with use, and I'm going to say empty. And then we want to specify that's it for now. It's name, amount, use script. Okay, sprite, name, amount, use script. Sprite, name, amount, use script. Okay, that's it. So we want to create this and make it this easy to add new item definitions to. Okay, and you'll have to edit this if you add different kinds of properties and things like that. You'll have to edit the script later, but at least you don't have to rewrite this for all of these. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what the script's going to look like. Let's copy and paste what we already had. And if you already deleted it, sorry, go ahead and go back and rewrite it. So we're actually going to create a script called add item def. So create script, and we're going to say env add item def. And let's do this. Just paste this in. And let's actually give a description for this one since we're going to be using it so much. You just do @desc. This helps the autocomplete and your stuff down here, it'll actually show up. And we'll just say add item definition to item definitions array. Okay, and you can actually give it parameters. So let's see what parameters we're going to need first of all. Well, the first parameter we're going to need is the item type, right? So I'm going to say var type of item equals argument 0. This is going to be passed in. So if we were to look here, this is argument 0 that we pass in. We're going to say var sprite. And I'm putting a underscore on it because of the way scripts work. So the script that calls this script, if it had a variable named sprite, these two would interfere basically. So I prefix it with the underscore so nothing interferes with each other. Okay, and I'm gonna give it argument 1. And you can see we're just gonna keep progressing this. Var, and we're gonna give it a name. It's gonna be argument 2. Then we're going to give it an amount, argument 3. We're going to give it a use script equals argument 4. I'm actually going to go ahead and increase these. I like lining it up. Oh my gosh, it bugs me. Okay, there we go. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now let's replace all of these values in here with what we have up here. So let's copy and paste the type of item and replace the hard-coded item type here. Then let's keep this because these are our hard-coded, basically, item types. And instead of setting it to these hard-coded values, we're going to set it to the values up here. So we're going to set our sprite to our passed in sprite. We're going to set our name to our passed in name. We're going to set our amount to our passed in amount. We're going to set our use script to our passed in use script. Okay, there we go. We have all 4 of our properties set, and now we can easily call this. And let me go show you how to do this JS doc. So basically this is going to help with the autocomplete and stuff. I'll show you that in a second. But basically you type in param, or you can use arg. And you have to put 3 dashes and then an @ sign. And we're going to you can actually specify a type here, which I don't know if that works with GameMaker actually, but we'll say type, and this will show up as like what's in the parameter down here. And you'll say type of item enum. You can specify enum, that's your kind of description of your parameter that you're passing in, or your argument. Okay, and then you're gonna do sprite index, and then you can do index of sprite to show in GUI, and then you can do @param amount. You could say amount of item of this item type we currently hold, and then you could do @param use script. Let's just say script. Script to execute on use. And you may not see all of this depending on what you have your preferences set up to, but you can change your preferences so you can see all this inside when you actually type out your function. So let's see it in action. So we have this item def, and let's create another one. So we're gonna do inv add item def. We're back at the declare items definitions script, by the way. And let's pass in our next type. Let's declare our yellow potion. So we say item type dot yellow, and you'll see down here it shows me what we wrote out, so you can actually remind yourself what to use. And you could turn off this show definition so you don't get this second piece. You could just see type sprite index blah blah blah. That's in your preferences. So I'm going to say yellow potion as the type we want to set here. The sprite index that we want to show is going to be our GUI sprite, so it's going to be sGUI vial yellow fat is the one I'm going to use. sGUI vial yellow fat. You can see they just auto-populate here when you type in sGUI. And the amount, we're going to start with 0, and the script to execute is going to be use. We haven't made these scripts yet, by the way. I'm just going to go ahead and type it. Use yellow potion, okay? And let's actually, let's leave it at that for now. And you can see how easy it is. We'll come back and add it in later when we actually have something to use. Let's go ahead and in our inventory folder on our scripts, let's create a new group and call it use scripts. Use scripts. Say item use scripts. And let's create a new script and call it use empty. And this one we could just say it doesn't do anything. We'll just leave it blank. And let's make another one. Create script. Let's call it use yellow potion. And let's just show a message on this one. Show message. We'll change this later so you can get the flash in the next video. You used yellow. Cool. That's all that's going to do when it's executed. We're going to go over how to do that. And you should see your things fade to a different color, your script references. Be sure not to put these boys after it. I don't know if that really matters, but you don't need to in this case because you're just storing a reference to the script. Expected 5 got 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You did get 4. What am I missing? Oh, missed a name here. So after the sprite, I need to put a name. And we'll just say yellow potion as the name. This is kind of going off screen, so I'm going to go ahead and fix that for you guys. You don't necessarily need to do this, but I did it. Awesome. So there we go. Now we've added 2 item definitions. And next, let's start creating our system for adding, removing, and all that hard stuff for arrays, okay? Awesome. So the first thing that we want to be able to do is add an item when we pick it up, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and close this code out. Let's create a new script in our inventory. It's not going to be under setup or item use script, so let's just leave it here for now. And we're going to call this inv add item, okay? This isn't adding an item definition. This is during gameplay, you pick up the item, it needs to be added to your inventory, okay? So how do we do that? Well, it's pretty easy. We're going to create the script to take in parameters. I'm going to give it a description. Let's say attempt to add an item to inventory, okay? So it's going to attempt because remember the inventory could be full. In that case, we can't put an item in the inventory, right? So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to pass in a type of item to add, right? So we pick up an item, it has a type, and remember that's that enum. So let's go ahead and create a var of type, and var, these variables are destroyed when the script's done executing, okay? So the memory is cleaned up, that's why I use var. So this variable is gone once the script is finished. And this is going to be the first argument we pass in. This is actually going to be the only argument we pass in because we're going to use inv add item, and then we're going to pass in the type, okay? So we have this long, basically slots, right? So it's this linear slot. You can imagine different boxes per slot, okay? So we have 20 slots. Remember, that's what we set up on the setup, is basically max inventory items. So we have 20 slots that each can contain a unique type of inventory item. And what we need to do, right now, they are all filled with empty or none, right? The type of none. If we were to go back to our enums, they're all filled with this. That's how we initialized it. So what we need to do is search for, starting at the left, basically the 0th position, and search for the first occurrence of that none type, where the type is none, right? And where that type is, we need to replace it with the type that we passed into the script. So think of boxes. They all are filled with nothing. And we need to perform a search to find the first box that is filled with nothing, and we need to put something into it, which the something in this case is type. So how do we do that? Well, by default, GameMaker doesn't have a function to find a value in an array, so we're going to write that. So it's actually going to be an array utility that you can use this for not only inventory systems, but for anything. So let's go ahead and write that. I'm going to put that outside of inventory. I'm going to create a new folder called utility. We're going to create a script, and we're going to call it array underscore find index. And what this is going to do, like I said, it's going to search for a specified value that you give it. And if that value is found, it's going to return the index in that array of that value, okay? And you can use this for any array, not just using it for inventory. Okay, so let's do it. Var. We're going to set up the array, so we're going to pass in an array, and I'm going to say ARR, and that's going to be argument 0. This is going to be the array that we're going to search through, and the value is going to be the value we want to search for. So I'm going to call it val, and that's going to be argument 1. This one actually needs to be argument 0, by the way. Okay, and now we just need to search through that array, so I'm going to use var. We're going to give it a temporary variable called let's do like G or something that isn't used a lot, okay? And let's do this G, okay? And it's going to be starting at index 0, and we're going to say as long as G is less than array length 1D, this is only going to be used for one-dimensional arrays, and we're going to pass in the array we're talking about is ARR, the argument 0 that we passed in. And we're going to increase G after this check is ran, so we can iterate through our array. Okay, and now all we need to do is say if ARR at index G is equal to the value that we're checking for here, then we want to return G, which is going to be the index in this array of that value. Okay, and here, after all this, we just need to return -1, okay? So if it hits return, so if it finds this value, then the script is done executing. It's finished. It's never going to get down here. But if this value is never found and then the for loop exits, that means that it got to the end of the array and the value that we wanted to look for was not found, then it's going to return -1. Okay, so this function is going to either return -1 or the index. And I'm not going to comment. If you want all the comments, support me on Patreon. You get access to my fully commented source code. And yeah, I've already released that on Patreon. So if you're interested, support me, and it's already up. It's already finished, and you can just examine the source if that's what you want to do. Okay, so we're doing the add item. And now we have a function that we could search for a specific value within an array. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say if array find index, and we're searching for the well, we would search for the inventory managers array, and we might have to come back and fix this. We haven't created an inventory manager yet, but basically we're going to be searching for through our inventory, which is our basically linear boxes. Remember, our boxes that have a type. We're searching for that. And we are searching for the type that was passed in here, okay? And this is going to return -1 or the index. So we're going to say if it's not equal to -1, then we want to basically replace the value, okay? So in this case, the type that we're adding to our thing, to our inventory, is not already in the inventory, okay? So in that case, we need to replace one of the empties with one of the empty boxes with this type. So we're actually going to write one more array function. So let's go add a new script. We're going to call it array replace value. Okay. And what this one's going to do is it's actually going to, you're going to give it a value, an old value to look for, and then a new value to replace that value with. So we're going to give it, basically we're going to pass in the empty or the none value enum and replace it with the given type that we said. So what do we need? We need to do, basically we're going to type in var index to replace at, this is going to be the index, and we could simply do array find index. That's that function we just wrote here, find index. We want to find the first index of our empty. So we can use our array find index function that we just created, and we can pass in the array we're looking at. And the array we're looking at is actually going to be the inventory. So we need to actually capture that using an argument. So we're going to say var array to use, I don't know. It needs to be a different name from the name actually in here. So it can't actually be ARR. I believe that'll actually mess it up. I could be wrong about that actually. Let's just call it underscore array. Okay, and this is going to be argument 0. That's the first thing that we're passing in, argument 0. So this is actually the array that we want to find. And we're going to pass that, we're going to send that through here. And then we have to give it a value to find, which is simply going to be an old value. So we actually need to capture this inside of an argument. So we're going to say old val, let's say old val equals argument 1. And this is going to be old val, okay? And that's it. So this is going to return the index, the first index of old val, okay? And now remember, it's going to return -1 if the old val is not found. So what we could do is we could say if index to replace at is not equal to -1, or actually is equal to -1, we'll just return here. We'll say -1. So we'll return -1 when the replace was a failure, basically, okay? And next we want to actually replace the value in the array, which shouldn't be too bad. All we have to do is say array, and then we give it the index to replace at, and then we just give it the value of the new type, which we didn't capture yet. So let's go ahead and capture that up here. So we're going to say new val. So this is going to be the value we're replacing the old value with, okay? And so now we have new val, and we're actually just going to set this to new val. Now, there's one caveat with arrays right here. When you're using this is actually, when you do this operation, array, this specific variable here becomes a new array, okay? It's not the original array that was passed in. So you're just getting a copy. And if you were to run this, the array that you expected to change would not be changed because it would have made a new copy, a new array, and you wouldn't have a reference to it anywhere. So we actually want to change the array that was passed in. We use an accessor for this. It's just going to be the @ sign, okay? That's just how it is for arrays. This is saying, hey, GameMaker, don't make a copy of the array and make the change to the copy. Instead, just make the change to the original array. This is also more performant, as well as you don't have to, if you have an array size 100 and you were to perform this operation, it would create a new array size of 100, so it'd have to reallocate all that memory once more. So in this case, it's just changing that original array. So that's why we're using this weird @ sign, okay? Awesome, so now our replace value is complete. So now we could say if array find index is not equal to -1, so this is our add item script, or actually, sorry, this needs to be is equal to -1. Kind of got that off. If array find index is equal to -1, basically the type that we're passing into our add item script, if it isn't already inside of our inventory array, then we want to go ahead and add it to our array. And that's why we did that thing that we just did. So we're going to say array replace value. We're going to replace using our inventory array, and we're going to replace the item type dot none, and we're going to replace that value with our type that was passed in. Okay, so this is our new type. So we're finding an empty or a none slot, and we're setting its value to this new type. Awesome. So that's it. And the next thing that we want to do is actually increase the amount of the items we have. So let's say the type was found inside of our inventory array. In that case, we want to actually increase how many of that item it is. We don't want to add it to our array again to a new slot because we have a slot. Remember, we could stack similar items. So we need to increase the amount of that item instead of doing this. So what do we need to do? So basically what we had in our replace value is returning -1 if the index was not found of the original one. This is basically saying in the case that our inventory is full, this script is going to return -1, okay? So what we could do is we could say if index added at, I'll show you where I'm getting this from in a moment, is not equal to -1. Basically, if our inventory is not full, then we want to do something, and this is going to be increasing our item size, okay? The reason we're doing this is because we're actually going to create a new var up here, and this is going to be called index added at, and we'll set this to -2 to start off with, okay? And then this replace value, we'll set index added at equals replace value. Remember, this is going to return -1 if our inventory is full. And remember, it's only going to get here if the type was not found in our inventory already. Okay, so our index added at can only be -1. It will only be -1 if both the type of item that we're trying to add is not already in our inventory and the inventory is full. Basically, no more item types can be added. That's when index added at will be -1. So in that case, we don't want to do anything because we can't possibly pick the item up. But, so we'll say if it's not equal to -1, then we do want to increase basically the amount of this type of item we have. And how do we do that? We simply do item definitions. Remember, we have an amount definition and the type of item, and then the property that we're setting, which is amount. So we just simply do item properties dot amount, and then we'll just simply do +=1 because we're adding one item. And after this, let's just return a value. This is just a check. We'll return if this was successful. And it's successful if index added at is not equal -1, okay? So this will return false if index added at was equal to -1 and true if it wasn't equal to -1. So you can basically choose to destroy the object if this returns true, or don't destroy the object if this returns false, basically the object in your game world. Awesome. So now we have an easy way to add an item to our inventory. Next, let's go over removing an item, which is actually quite a bit easier, okay? Awesome. So let's create a script. We're going to call it inv remove item. And basically we're going to pass in the same information. We're going to pass in the type of item to remove. And that's going to be argument 0. So this is saying after we use an item, we might call the script to remove an item. Okay. The first thing we need to do is find the index of this item inside of our inventory array. Okay. So we're simply going to use var index of given type equals array find index. We're going to search through our inventory array and we're going to look for the type. That simple. And this will return -1 if the type was found, and if not, it's going to return the index that item is located in our slots. So next, let's do if index of given type is not equal to -1. Remember, -1 if it wasn't found. In that case, we can't remove anything because it doesn't exist in our inventory. And then the first thing we want to do is increase the amount. So this is like where we used an item, right? And we want to remove it. So we decrease the amount first. So we're going to do item definitions of type. We're going to get that type that we passed in. That's what we're changing the amount of. And this is going to be item properties dot amount -1. Simple. And the next thing that we're going to do is see if our amount is 0 or -1. And if so, we actually need to remove it from our slots because there's no more. They shouldn't be in our inventory anymore, period, because we don't have any more. The amount is 0 or negative. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just simply say if item definitions of this type, same thing, item properties dot amount is less than or equal to 0. And in this case, we want to say inventory index of given type equals item type dot none. So we're just deleting basically that type that is currently there, and we're replacing it with none once again. Kind of the reverse of what we did. We can actually get rid of these brackets because we don't have further code after this, and it'll run just fine. And yeah, so that's basically it. And remember, inventory is a variable known to an object that is going to be managing our inventory in the next video that we're going to create. So we don't actually have to use that accessor because the array reference is not passed into the script, okay? Awesome. So we have remove, we have add, and then I think that's going to be it for this, guys. So we have an add. We can now add an item. We can remove an item. We can create new items and set them up. And the next video, we're going to go over actually drawing the items to the screen, actually getting it, implementing the gameplay, implementing a parent collectible object, and it will be seamless for you to add new items to your game and use them. Awesome. So once again, if you support me on Patreon, you have access to all this code heavily commented. I know I'm kind of trying to rush a little bit, so I'm not commenting as much on this, but you can get access to the full source of this entire project and full comments and all that. It's all accessible. That's only if you want to support me on Patreon. It's just another thing I'm offering patrons, okay? Yep, so that's going to be it, guys, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.